Welcome to Creatives in Quarantine. I'm Tiwana Floyd, your host. This week, I talked to Ari Wojciech. Ari is dependent on structure and routine to find the balance between nursing people back to health as an essential worker and making time to write every Monday and Thursday and self-produce films he acts in. Ari is very talented. Here's Ari.
Now,
Hello.
hello,
Thanks for
hello.
having me.
Thank you for being here. I know you as you have a lot of talent. I know it's pretty much like any creative. I know you to be an actor, a writer, a director, maybe a cinematographer
Yeah.
or DP.
Yeah. For my own stuff, not for like other people.
Yeah, but we don't have to give it a modifier, right? Yes, because the
Appreciate
more
that,
that
yeah.
you do these things, you become, really proficient at doing them. And you
Yeah.
are an essential worker, which I also include nurses and doctors as a part of creative as well. And so, thank you for everything that you've been doing
Oh,
on that
yeah.
end.
No worries.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky. My nursing job is at an oncology hospital.
Oh,
So
okay.
we have immunocompromised patients all the time. So we had a lot of protocols in place already.
Yeah.
But COVID just kind of like stacked them on top of each other.
Right.
And fortunately, we've been fully staffed. It's kind of incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. I've been able to still work part-time. I pick up extra shifts pretty often, but
Mhm.
there's not a severe need, which is really, we're very blessed. So
Yeah. What is
very
part
grateful.
time for you? Is that 3 days, like 3 12-hour shifts? Or?
Yeah, full-time is 3 12-hour shifts a week. And I usually work 2. This week I'm
Oh, that's
working
great.
3, and next
Okay.
week I'm working 3. But
Mhm.
yeah, so before COVID, I just 2 nights a week. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm still very lucky to only have to work 3, but
Mhm.
uh, yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky.
What shift do you do? I'm always intrigued by
I
that.
do graveyard shift, so 7 p.m. to 7:30 a.m.,
Gotcha.
which sounds terrible, but you get used to it. It's
Mhm.
and as long as I have like a structure in place, I can survive.
Right. Do you find I guess the turnover if you work 2 shifts back to back, how is it that third day? Are you recuperating? Do you bounce back quickly?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I've still figuring it out. Initially, when I first started really pursuing writing and acting and all this stuff, typically on that third day, and even between shifts, I would get off work, strip down at the doorway, take a shower,
Mhm.
and then make a decaf cup of coffee so I could sleep. And then I would write for a little bit and run lines. But more recently, I've just been hopping in the shower and going straight to bed
Yeah.
at like 9 a.m. and then getting like 4 to 5 hours of sleep.
Mhm.
And then I'll wake up and do like an abridged morning routine. And if I have a class, I'll have a class and then but I'll still go to bed at a reasonable time, like between 10 p.m. and midnight. I
Mhm.
can switch back pretty easily. I'm very, very lucky. Some of my friends have to stay on a night schedule, which is really hard,
Yeah.
especially with quarantine and stuff.
Mhm.
And then others, they're a wreck for
Yeah.
24 hours after.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been really fortunate. I can bounce back pretty quick.
Yeah, the reason why I asked, my best friend is also a nurse, and she, for the most part, has always worked that 7 to 7 shift in ER. So
Oh God, that's
so
really
depending
hard.
on the hospital, it could be incessant. But she likes the
Mm-hmm.
busy. She likes how sharp it keeps her. Um, but her sleeping schedule is really off. So I'm always curious to know how it affects other people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard. And ER too is like
Yeah.
so hit or miss.
Yeah.
Um, but good for her though. Gosh.
Yes. Right. So, so, so tell us about how. Okay, so here you are. You went to nursing school. You made that choice
Yeah.
to do that, and then somewhere along the lines, there's a creative element in terms of artistry. Was that always there, or did you just realize that at some point?
Yeah. So that creative element started from a very young age. If you look at my sixth grade, we made like a continuation book. And every kid, there was like a list of names, and every kid wrote what they wanted to be when they grew up next to it. And mine says writer on it. And growing up, filmmaking and acting were like always something that I was interested in, always something I was excited about. And I started volunteering at a hospital when I was 14 because of my parents. And the nurses were so nice, always willing to help out, always team players. And they only worked 3 days a week. Yeah. and like, so from around 15, 16, it just was like, oh, like I'll work 3 days as a nurse and 4 days as a filmmaker. Obviously it's not that simple, but that was the plan from like my senior year of high school. And I'm doing it now, basically trying to.
You're working on it. But then how did you make the transition from something that's so regimented and one field of study, and then what point did that shift happen?
That is a great question. A lot of people will ask me, they're like, what is harder, nursing or like pursuing acting and writing? And I will say nursing is very hard. I don't think you could pay me enough to go through nursing school again.
Yeah.
But the fact that it is regimented makes it so much easier to just kind of like dive like headstrong into. And with acting and writing, I mean, honestly, really still figuring it out. When I was in Seattle, my first thought was like, oh, why don't I try and go to film school part-time? And that fell through for a variety of reasons. But having gone through that process of applying and thinking about it, I started auditioning for that film school and like kind of built a small community and became a part of the very small filmmaking community out there. So yeah, I guess short answer that we could go into is finding the artistic community was like really where it started after getting out of this very regimented schooling. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It just makes me think also that it's probably easier to be able to be a writer and be a nurse at the same time, because there's no kind of pull on your time, really. I mean, you could do it on your lunch break, you could do it from home essentially, as opposed to now when you transition to being in front of the camera, now there's this demand, if you will, on your time in terms of now you've got to learn lines, now you've got to be somewhere to audition.
Yeah, I will say all the acting stuff, that's come the latest, because developing a writing habit was super, I mean, not easy. It is, a lot of people have a really hard time developing a writing habit, but I was able to, like you said, able to do that anywhere, anytime, you know, whereas acting, you're kind of dependent on other people or dependent on a class and that sort of thing. But again, finding that community, like so Berg Studios was the first acting class I ever took out here in LA, and finding that was a huge stepping stone. And just finding like-minded people. And through there, I discovered your mastermind class, which again, huge, like, cause I had no understanding of the business end of it, of how to market yourself.
At Berg?
It was actually at Graham Shields.
Yeah.
But I think I had heard of you at Berg, and
Understood.
then when I moved to Graham.
We must have transitioned around the same time.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, again, I for anybody who is struggling to break into a creative field coming from a more regimented place, finding a community, even if that's just a class. And I just started using Skillshare actually, and that has put me in connection with other writers, which has been incredible. So if you're looking for a place to start while in quarantine, Skillshare is pretty awesome.
That's good to know. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that would be a place to go to find communities, but it does make sense.
Yeah, I think I just kind of lucked out just the class I took, there was like an assignment that came with it, and you just drop the assignment, like the assignment link, like you upload it to a Dropbox and then put the link in the comment section, and then other writers read your work and provide feedback. And
Oh, that's great.
way. Yeah.
Well,
really
speaking of writing, what because you say, well, I write my own stuff, which is great. That's the way we want to be, especially now, right? But so what type of narratives do you write? What's your medium?
Genre. Medium.
I always want to use those two and get those two confused. What's your genre?
No. This is a great question. I really want to write feature lengths, like movies, which I do. But for stuff for myself, right now with quarantine and stuff, I'm very dependent on structure and routine. Otherwise, I just kind of like fall away into distractions and all that stuff. But so I started writing short projects to shoot in our apartment. And with my schedule, because I was still taking acting classes online, and I take a singing class online too. Mondays and Thursdays were my free days. So every Monday and Thursday I would write a short. Usually it's comedy. But some of it's I did a horror one and stuff, but and then I would only shoot Mondays and Thursdays and only edit Mondays and Thursdays, and having that like structure really helped. And then eventually I posted all of them over the course of 8 weeks. So short content for myself, lots of comedy, but really the Monday, Thursday thing was a way for me to practice filmmaking. So I did a horror one just to kind of like figure out a jump scare. Like, how do you pull that off? I did like a mock.
Well, hold on, rewind. What's a jump scare?
A jump scare. So like, yeah. So, I mean, it's a lot like comedy, really. You're setting up an expectation, and then there's a punchline or a payoff. So really, like the one I did, very basic. There's a shot of some like specter ghost standing over a woman sleeping. She wakes up, has to go to the bathroom. The lights go out, and we follow her as she like goes to the bathroom, and you're expecting the scare, so you're like waiting. And then she goes to the bathroom. There's nothing there. Oh, it's okay. And then she turns around and there's somebody there. And,
Got it.
Graham always says that comedy is expectation versus reality. And I think like horror has kind of similar elements. You're always trying to subvert the expectation.
Right. No, and that makes sense, because as I'm expecting that scare to happen and it doesn't, then I relax a little bit, and then it happens, and now I'm scared.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is awful. I'm actually not a huge horror fan, to be honest, but I think there's a lot of basic filmmaking techniques that you can garner from it.
Yeah. So, and then you also mentioned that you sing, and do you play an instrument as well? Yeah. So my parents, so supportive. They started us in like a kinder music program when I was like 4 or 5. And then I took piano lessons and all that stuff. So that's always been a part of my life. But right now I mostly play guitar because I can't afford a piano. And I love musicals. So I also wrote a little short musical scene, which was a lot of fun. Did you film it?
Yeah. So that was one of those like Monday, Thursday only things. Very short, very brief, but taking singing classes has helped tremendously. I never grew up in a choir or anything. So.
Oh, okay. What was I going to say? So all of this stuff lives on your website?
Yes, and YouTube and Instagram, which has been interesting. I'm still figuring that out. I was actually just having a conversation with one of my good friends. His name's Jack DeLay. He has a music collective called Cynosure, and they do live streams. They started doing live stream like parties once quarantine started, and they're figuring out if it's best to stream on both Twitch and YouTube at the same time, or if they should just post it on YouTube after the fact. And similarly, I'm like, should I post this stuff on YouTube or just Vimeo? should I share it to
Right.
Instagram as a post, or should I put it as like a Instagram live thing?
Mhm.
And I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah, I think that you're supposed to choose one platform that you completely focus on, and then you can just spread it to the other ones. But the one, whichever platform that is where you give all of your
Oh,
attention to, in terms of description and formatting and all other stuff. And then you post it to the other ones. But really finding one home where
yeah.
people know that they can get the most potential of that footage, or live, or whatever, wherever that's going to be. And
Good to know.
I know there's another platform of, I think it's called Yardbird or StreamYard. I think it's StreamYard, which allows you to stream directly to YouTube, but then it'll take you to Facebook and some other platforms as well. But the main hub is YouTube, and it'll parse out to the other ones as well. So
Oh,
maybe that's
cool.
something to look into for you and for your friend.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. So here we are in quarantine. You've been
That's
keeping
right.
busy with writing your own stories and filming them.
Yeah. 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 It's been a blast.
How did you learn how to film and edit? Is that, did you study that? Did you use just trial and error?
Yeah, kind of a combination. So nursing school, even though it was regimented, wasn't very straightforward for me. I got in my sophomore year of college and just kind of fucked around a little too hard.
Mm-hmm.
The last quarter, my GPA dropped and I got kicked out.
Mm.
So I had to reapply. And I had to retake some classes. So I had like 2 quarters off. They do a quarter system up in Seattle. And during that time, I bought a camera, my first camera, and just started shooting music videos for friends. Eventually, like shot some short scenes and stuff. And a lot of it, it was just trial and error. I mean, the amount of educational content on YouTube, even back then,
Right.
is really incredible. Like you can learn so much as long as you have the fortitude and like kind of like self-starter attitude. You can learn so much on your own these days. Lately, though, I read this. Actually, no, I watched a YouTube video about, I watch a lot of YouTube, about the 5-hour rule, which, so Benjamin Franklin, he had a rule that Monday through, like 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, he set aside a whole hour just to learn something that might be related to the field he was in at the time or just completely unrelated. And I've really taken to that and tried to integrate that into my daily routine. And it all started with Skillshare, really. One of my favorite YouTubers, he was like, oh, get like X amount of months for free on Skillshare using this code.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, like let's try it out. And so I took an editing class on there. And at this point, right now in 2020, I've been editing since probably 2011, 2012, using Adobe Premiere. And at the beginning, lots of trial and error. It's an intuitive program once you've used other editing software.
Okay.
But if you've never edited before, it's a lot to take in.
Okay.
So I just went back to basics. I was curious, like, how do they actually teach this software? And yeah, super illuminating. My workflow is much faster now, which is awesome. But yeah, for people who are hesitant to start using programs like that or editing their own work, DaVinci is a free program, very similar to Adobe Premiere. You can get it online for free, and there's just tons of content online. And it can be tricky to start, but just find something and go from there. And you'll have questions, and you can kind of like parse out what you need to know, and you'll figure out who's better at explaining them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I am at that juncture of, I've been using iMovie for very basic things, but now that I'm wanting to, because it's kind of limited, but it gets the job done for depending on what you need to do. But because I'm wanting to add more bells and whistles, and I do have the whole Adobe suite, now it's the Adobe Premiere, which I'm intimidated by. But I'm glad that you said that if you have a semblance of editing skill, then it won't be easy, but it will help.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Was there more to the question? I'm so sorry.
I know, right? I was like, what? I got caught up in like, okay, YouTube, that's right. I can look at these videos.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can send you some links too if there are show notes for this
I would
and
love
stuff.
that. I could probably add them here as well. But yeah, I think I was talking about staying creative during quarantine. You are doing that with writing your own material, still taking acting classes and voice lessons. And I really love the idea of this 5-hour rule, but more importantly, your Mondays and your Thursdays. When this quarantine started, was that Monday and Thursday already in place before the pandemic?
No. So that was very much a product of being stuck inside.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very blessed. I mean, I have a job, so I am able to continue taking classes and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first 2 days of quarantine back in March, right? It was like March 20th or 17th or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The first like 3 days I slept until like noon, and just was like, it's funny now, but at the time it really was like, what's is this? Like, what is that? Yeah, what is going on? And I, for the longest time, I was one of those people that was like, I have to write at a coffee shop. Like I have to write at a live, like I can't do it at home, and as a result, I was also very bad with money because I would eat out more and buy more coffee.
Right.
And all this stuff.
Yeah.
But after that third day, I was like, nope, you need to wake up at 7, like you need to. And thanks to your mastermind class, honestly, I was able to find accountability partners.
Yeah.
And we were very gentle on ourselves at first. Francesca Reggio, who's great. Look her up if you're on Instagram. Francesca Reggio, she's awesome. But we were very like gentle on each other at first. We were like, just check in before 8. Like that was it. Like that was the only like accountability piece. It wasn't like wake up at 7 and write 500 words or whatever. It was just like get out of bed before 8. That was the only thing. And I just kind of built from there, James Clear talks a lot. He's this writer and self-help guru person. But he always talks about the 2-minute rule. And he's like, figure out what you want to do in your life, whether it be lose weight or go running or cook or write, and break it down to that 2-minute first step. Like, what is the first step? And just focus on that. Like, don't worry about the bigger outcome or like the time it's going to take to write X amount of words or whatever. Just what does it take to get you in front of the computer or get your shoes on to run, And those first few days was really about like, okay, wake up before 8, open up the Word document or the writing program I use and go. Like, and that was it. And now I have a much more like regimented routine. Thankfully, that's keeping me going. And eventually the Monday and Thursday element came into place. Yeah.
So when you start to write, are you doing a free fall, just writing stream of consciousness, or are you coming, or is it different every time? Are you coming with structure, or is it different every time?
Great question. So I'm a huge fan of Josh Waitzkin. He was a former chess champion who went on to be a Tai Chi champion and wrote this book called The Art of Learning, which hilariously I haven't read, but I've listened to tons of his interviews. He's amazing. He's really great. Okay. I'll send you some links, but his whole thing is end the day with a question. So with writing, and this is kind of a chicken, which came first, the chicken or the egg. If you're just starting, I recommend just mind dump. Like when you if you're going to start writing today, set a time and just mind dump some ideas, thoughts, whatever. And then Josh Waitzkin, and then Ernest Hemingway used to do this too. He would finish in the middle of a sentence and So on the actual script that I'm writing, I'll finish in the middle of a sentence on the action line or in the middle of a line of dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have an Evernote journal, which used to be a handwritten journal, but I've recently gone to online just to save money, quite frankly. And on the journal, I'll have a question. And then that next day, I'll get onto the Evernote first, copy that question, put it into a new journal, blank journal entry, and just start free writing off of that question. And then once I kind of get to a place of like, okay, let's like actually put this on the script, I'll move to the script.
Okay.
That was kind of a roundabout way of saying that. But I start with my journal, the question that's in the journal, and then go to the script.
Right.
That's in the.
Yeah, no, that was a great answer nonetheless, because I'm curious to know, especially now in time of, of pandemic, as we're operating differently and trying to find structure in the midst of this, then what is your structure now writing? Or was it that way before, or is it just?
Oh, yeah. So the one consistency that maintained through quarantine, and something that I've been trying to cultivate for a while now, is writing is the first thing that I do in the day. It just has to be. If I don't do it first, there's a good chance I won't get to it. Just kind of the nature of life, And actually, to be more specific, I wake up and I started taking cold showers. I struggle with eczema.
Mm-hmm.
This might be an overshare, but
if somebody's struggling with eczema, it's like, yeah, man, I get it.
Yeah. But similarly, though, I was like, if I don't take a cold shower right when I wake up, I'm never gonna take one because I just hate it. I hate it so much. I hate cold showers. They suck. My eczema has improved. On the bright side, though.
Yeah.
So I take a cold shower and then I meditate. Because similarly, if I don't do that right after the shower, it doesn't get done. Yeah. I make my coffee and then I sit down to write. Mm-hmm. And something that has really helped keep that going is I don't keep my phone in the bedroom. When I go to bed, it's charging in the kitchen, mm-hmm. And that huge game changer, mm-hmm. like tremendous game changer.
Mm-hmm. And so do you check your phone after you've started writing, when you got your coffee?
Yeah. So I would usually check it that first hiccup when I'm writing and I hit that first bump where I'm like, I hate what I'm writing, or I just don't know what to write. Mm-hmm. But I've become like very regimented. It's kind of like weird talking about it out loud, but my friend Jack, the Signature guy, the music guy, he just started doing I forget what it's called. It's like named after a tomato, but it's like you work 42 minutes, 18-minute break, 42 minutes, 18-minute break, and you just do that throughout the day. Mm-hmm. And I don't do the 18-minute break part, but I do the 42-minute chunks. Mm-hmm. So especially for that first set of writing, mm-hmm. just a 42-minute chunk. And then if I'm still feeling it, I'll keep writing. Otherwise, I'll make another cup of coffee, and I'll start my 1 hour of learning on Skillshare. Okay. And while I'm making that cup of coffee, I'll check my phone.
I see.
But I don't check the phone during that first bout of writing. Although I will send a text to Francesca saying that I woke up
at 8. And that's just Monday through Friday. That's just not the weekends.
Yeah, just Monday through Friday. Yeah. And I also use my phone for meditation, but I'll keep it on the airplane mode. Okay. Overnight, so I don't see any of the notifications.
That's great.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm like really going the Josh Wadeskin. So that guy I had mentioned earlier.
Right.
He has this whole he has this whole thing about bringing in inputs and putting out outputs. And there's a lot of research that suggests the best time of day for output is the morning, when you've woken up fresh. And if the first thing you're doing is responding to email, it's just input, clogging up that output,
Okay.
So he's a huge advocate for holding off as long as you can before checking anything,
Right.
to allow you to have that creative space in the
Right.
morning.
Yeah, I
But
think
everybody's different though.
yeah, but I mean, I get that because when you wake up, you're coming out of a deep state of sleep, and so your mind is refreshed and ready to probably be a vortex of information that can flow through. But then, especially if we're doing social media, we go back into that kind of like that theta state with the scrolling up and down, where we're taking in so much, then everything's out the window. I was listening to Bob Iger of Disney. I think he's the
Oh,
CEO,
yeah.
but the head of Disney, and he talked about how he wakes up at 4:30 in the morning every day, and so during that time, he does not check his phone. He exercises. He has the news on, but no volume. But he has music on, and this is his time to create his day. And he doesn't look at emails because it will change his mood, and because we have no idea what's going to be in that email. Which also reminds me of another friend who said he's a stand-up comic, and he said that anytime that he was about to go on stage, he would not check his phone or text messages because he
Oh,
didn't want
yeah.
anything to alter his state before he hit the stage. So that makes sense in terms of putting that stuff aside. And it's like we used to do that, and now we don't. And
Yeah.
I struggle with it. It's like some days, and I'll do airplane mode also, I struggle with it, but some days I'm just like, oh, okay, I can get straight to my meditation and write my gratitude notes or whatever, and then check that. And then sometimes it's like you need to see if anything came through overnight that you need to deal with today, as if things are regular. So, but that's
Yeah.
like a little excuse for me to be able to check my phone. It's like the addict is lying to itself to say it's okay, you're checking for information.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it is an addiction. I mean, uh, addiction is
Yeah,
very serious and it takes all forms. But
yeah, it takes all forms, right? Mm-hmm.
um,
Form of
but
vice.
I love what you said about gratitude notes.
Mm.
So you open your day with that. That's so cool.
Yeah, I think it's Oprah who says she does it at night, but for me, doing it during the day is a reminder right away that
Yeah.
that all is well, and these are the things that I'm grateful for. And lots of, I mean, sometimes it could be as simple as, oh my God, my building is so quiet. Like on Sunday,
Yeah.
the world is super quiet, or whatever comes to mind, and as just a reminder, and then meditation, and then I start my day. But it's like as soon as my alarm goes off on my phone, then it's like, oh, off to the races. I can check the email, I could check the Instagram, Facebook, whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
even now I'm getting better at giving myself limits with that, because once I start going into a numb state as I'm scrolling up and down on that, then it's like, oh, you're
Yeah.
not even paying attention, and you're just taking in these images, and you have no idea what they're causing in your mind for the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, the flip side too is like, once you do start writing, or once you do start rehearsing, or once you do start running, it's so much easier to keep going. So you might as well like trigger that positive
Right.
practice as opposed to
Yeah.
the scrolling.
Exactly. So with all that you've been, I guess, ingesting, but with intention, your intentional ingestions, has there been anything inspiring that's kept you going during the quarantine?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I rediscovered really, uh, Ricky Jay
Mm.
is his name. He's a magician, died like 2-3 years ago, I think. May he rest in peace. But he had this, what's the word? He was known for being a really intense historian of magic.
Oh.
And so he would do these like really incredible, elaborate card tricks. And while he was doing them, he would be like, this was the first entertainer to ever do such and such. And he had this just encyclopedic knowledge of everything entertainment prior to like movies and that sort of thing. And
Like a
through that,
tour? Is that raconteur? Is that the word?
I don't know.
Okay, continue.
Yeah. Oh, no worries, no worries. His most famous special is called Ricky Jay and His 52 Assistants. And it's just him talking about cards, card tricks, the history of card tricks. Sounds super boring, but the way he does it is like very mesmerizing. It's like beautiful to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I discovered David Blaine, who's a more current magician.
Yeah.
And I love, one of the reasons I love magic, and especially like hearing David Blaine talk about it, is so many of these artistic forms, and even like nurses and doctors, like their success, it's so easy to just see that person and their success, but you don't see the steps it took them to get there.
Right.
You know, that isn't as tangible.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, when I watch magicians, I really feel it. I'm like, wow, you must have worked on that for hours. You must have like really poured your heart and soul into this.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that that isn't apparent with other artists or anything like that, but there's just something about magicians for me that is like so tangible. And actually, I have a quote here from David Blaine. He gave a TED talk. I can send you the link.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm like splitting screens right now. Thank you.
Well, as you're doing that, you know he's about to go from, I think, New Jersey to New York with.
Yes. I'm so excited. I set the reminder. I'm going to be watching. That'll be my first David Blaine like live experience.
Oh, okay.
Which is like it's like a regret that I didn't discover him sooner to have seen his other work, you know? Mm-hmm. But yeah, and he finishes his TED, spoilers, I guess, for David Blaine's TED talk. He says that as a magician, I try to show things to people that seem impossible. And I think magic, whether I'm holding my breath or shuffling cards, is pretty simple. It's practice, it's training, it's experimenting while pushing through the pain to be the best that I can be. And that's what is magic to me. And it's so cool because he really has moved past traditional like illusions and like mimicry and stuff. It's very much just endurance art is what he calls it. It's him just like pushing his body and his mind to these like limits. And yeah, it's just discipline. It's just showing up every day. And it's a really extreme version of that. But yeah, I find it really inspiring.
Oh yeah, because we can apply that to pretty much anything that we want to do successfully. Those tenets.
Yeah. It's all magic. Like everything we're doing is magic.
All magic, right? Yeah. I mean, just as you were talking about, you know, the doctor and the nurse we don't know what the tangible steps are to get there, but we have that vision. It's like that light at the end of the tunnel. And then we learn along the way, oh, this might be harder than what I thought or whatever, but we still stay the course. And then we get those moments where magic happens is what I always kind of coach is like, leave space for the magic to happen. No matter what, then there's magic occurring just as a result of the actions that you take daily.
Heck yeah. I love that.
So let's see. We've got quarantine moments. That's your inspiration. And then being that you've been working on the projects and short films and everything that you've been doing thus far, what do you see in terms of, or do you have a plan or a project for when we come out of this, or are you taking it day by day?
Oh, wow.
Because we don't really know, we can't really plan anything right now because we don't know when we're coming back out of this, but there's still these things that we want to do that's like, as soon as this opens up, then I can probably move a little more expediently on that because then I'll have access to the world or something like that.
Yeah, I do. So there are things I'm looking forward to and like goals I have for sure, but none of them are really tied to quarantine. I just realized, which is that, I mean, that's not a problem, but I am still, as an actor, I don't have any representation.
Right.
And I think in being in quarantine has made that a little tricky. So maybe like working towards that more once quarantine is done. But I'm still regardless of if quarantine lifts sooner than later, I'm going to continue this Monday, Thursday routine. And so the first Monday, Thursday video I posted was on the summer solstice, and which is just kind of like an arbitrary thing. So the second season, I just posted the last video last week, but the second season will start winter solstice of 2020. So I'm working on that right now. And then my buddy Jack, who I keep talking about, he and I do a podcast every other week. So just going to keep doing that. And we just did we recorded our 10th episode last week, and we'll be posting it next week. And we just had a meeting today about kind of our goals for the next 10. So yeah, I guess my goal is to just keep working on stuff that isn't dependent on quarantine lifting.
Well, what's the podcast? What's the name of it? Is it already?
Oh, yeah. It's called Practice is what it's called. And you can find it on my website or SoundCloud. I sometimes have the link up on Instagram. But yeah, I really need to get better at committing to a place to post. This is like Mastermind 101. It's out there. It's out there. It's out there. I just... Yeah, it's on SoundCloud. It's on Ari Wojciech's SoundCloud is where it is. And so we actually were just talking about a mission statement today, and we're just trying. When I started it, it was just me, and I interviewed my good friend Jack, and we had such a good time. We were like, oh, let's just have you be the co-host. And I started it as a way to improve my ability to articulate myself vocally. I think even this conversation, I still like kind of wander around. I use like a lot, and
Oh, I see what you're saying, right? Well, this is a casual conversation, so this one is just for fun.
I appreciate that. But yeah, so that's kind of where it started. And the reason it was called Practice was like I'm practicing talking, basically. But it's kind of taken on a more clear-cut format, which is really exciting. So we open up with a recommendation that we've discovered over the last few weeks, and then we end with sharing a poem or a piece of visual art that we found. And through that, we talk about various things. But yeah. So we're just trying to like maintain a beginner's mindset and share the stuff that we learn together. Yeah.
And how did that come to be? How did you decide podcast?
I really love interviews. And I, for a long time, was an extrovert that really struggled. And I identified myself as an introvert because I was so awkward and had a difficult time like speaking to people. And as I've gotten older, the way I'm talking about extrovert and introvert is about how you get energy. So extroverts get energy from interacting with people, introvert gets energy from being alone.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, and nursing helped immensely because you have to talk to people,
Yeah.
And I discovered that I really do love talking to people and meeting people and having conversations and this and that, but I never knew how to do it. And the movie, this is so embarrassing. The movie, it's called Crazy Stupid Love.
Oh yeah.
The Ryan Gosling, Steve Carell movie.
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling's like coaching Steve Carell on how to like approach women.
Yeah.
And his whole thing was like, you don't matter. You need to make that person feel like the most interesting person in the world and ask them all these questions. And that movie really spearheaded this like moment in my life where I realized I just need to get better at like asking questions. And that has now manifested in this podcast, basically. Yeah.
That's funny because you don't strike me as someone who has a hard time with questions. I think you always have questions and great questions, insightful questions that get you to the next step. So
I'm so glad to hear that.
I'm like, I'm baffled by that.
Yeah. Me asking questions like this side of me is very, not new. I would say this is the last 10 years of my life have been that way, but I used to be very, very awkward. And
I understand that. I was as well. Yeah. And just like you, I love interviews, which is the reason why I love podcasts or YouTube or anything with two people expressing. Is probably why I love
Yeah.
the idea of this so much, because you get to know the person. And as I've been doing this, I've been learning so much about each individual each time, just by this little casual conversation that we would probably normally have at a Starbucks or something if we had the time. But now we get to do it on Zoom, where the time is a little elusive, or whatever it's doing in the world. But yeah, I'm the same way. And I just find, kind of like what you're talking about, the movie is just giving people the comfort and the space to share. And then when something new comes up, I'm just like, wait, I did not know that about you. And then I'll ask that. And then that takes us down another journey, another path.
No, yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
finding.
The
I guess I'm
yeah. No, you're doing great though. I'm curious, who are your biggest interview idols? You're like, oh, I love their show.
That's a great question. I guess I don't really think about it that way, but I will say I know that I don't care for a host who feels the need to interject their views a lot, or need to crack jokes or do bits, or as someone is talking and they're just in the middle of their thought and then they interject and then it's like, oh, they were about to say something, and then we never get to find out what that was. So because I prefer to hear the other person, the guest speak, I'll have a question and I'll store it, and then I'm just more focused on listening, not breaking the
Yeah.
thought. I don't want to break the thought.
I love that.
Yeah.
You don't want to break the thought. That's a great mission statement for an interview show.
Right.
Kind of.
That might even be a title. That might even be a name of a show. Right?
Yes.
Don't break the thought. Right.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to think about who I listen to so much. I won't go into who I despise, who just want to throw my phone across the room.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Get to the point. Stop interrupting. But yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
Comprised of what the elements of a good interview is, just letting the people speak and then steering them and giving them the space to not feel judged, but just being interested. I'm mostly interested, like all the stuff that you're talking about. I knew elements, like small bits of it, but now I'm learning about podcasts and how you became a nurse, and didn't do well that one year, because we all have that one year in college where it's like, this year is really fun.
Yes. Yeah, it was a dark time.
And then we get back on track.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between the amateur and the professional. It's not that you don't make mistakes, it's that you recover quickly.
Right. And even for those who may have had a bad year in college, and maybe getting back on track is not continuing to go back to college. Maybe getting back on track is whatever the next part of their life is. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's great. I love, sorry, one last thought.
No apologies.
Yeah. I love what you said about, like, off the top of your head, you couldn't think of interviewers who you really like, but you instantly knew who you didn't like. I think that's a really underrated way of finding your priorities. I feel like it's so obvious to kind of figure out what you want to do, but not enough people talk about figure out what you don't want to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think that was a huge moment for me, realizing that too.
Yeah.
Figure out what you say no to.
Yeah. I think that when I try to get really specific about anything, the things that I want, and if it's hard for me to get to or download what it is that I specifically want, it's hard for me to give the specifics because I can't dream that big enough or whatever, then I'll just think about what I don't want and then reverse it. And so that's the easiest way for me to get to the things that I desire and like, and calling into my life.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And so before we go, because I know that you've got to, oh, you have an extra little member over there. A cat.
Oh, yes,
Your
yes.
foster kitten.
We have two. Yeah.
Right. Well, one's not a foster. One was part of the family, and then you brought one.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But we're probably just gonna adopt the
I,
foster, honestly.
it looks like it. Like from the images, I'm like, I think, what's the little one's name? The new one?
Elmo.
I think Elmo's already inserted himself.
Oh yeah,
Technology.
it's a little horrifying. He like it feels like he knows where to be all the, and he's like, yeah, it's hilarious. He's so cute.
Right. He knows how to be cute. Just
Yeah.
enough to make you fall in love, and then like he walked in, he's like, I'm gonna stay here. All right. I'll wait for them to sleep and I'll whisper in their ear.
They really like take over the space. I was reading that if you have an outdoor cat in like a suburban area, they alter the ecosystem for like a 5-mile radius.
Wow.
Yeah, cats are terrifying, but I also love them. Yeah.
Very smart creatures. Is there anything else you'd like to share? And one more thoughts before we end?
No. Well, actually, Tiwana, what are you working on these days? What are you most excited about these days?
Well, yeah, I think the top of it was, the top of the quarantine was me just taking this time to not think about the business of acting, because it was a nice welcome into a break. And then then the uprising started to happen, which depleted my energy, no bandwidth, just exhausted. And then, but still, I wanted to do something creatively with some improv people, and reached out. There was a Don't Rush challenge that people were doing. I don't know if you know the Don't Rush challenge, where it's like women start off, or I won't just say women because it morphed into all these different areas. But it started off with these women who were moms, and so they were like with their babies in house with robe or whatever, how they may wake up in the morning, and then they take like a makeup brush and they put it over the thing, and you come back and they're like all done up. So it's like the before and after transformation, and then they would toss the brush up and so on and so forth. And so I wanted to do that with toilet paper, and not everybody was on board with it. They thought I was tone deaf about it, and I'm like, guys, it's toilet paper. It's ridiculous that we're hoarding toilet paper. That's the whole point of the comedy. But and I talked to various groups, but I talked to one group who I had just done the Bob Curry Fellowship at Second City last year. And we got on a Zoom, and then somebody just talked about how hard it is to watch Zoom improv when people are in different houses, because delays and all of the things that happen.
Yeah.
And then I slept on that, and I was like, that's it. So we turned that into a web series. I think now we just released episode 3 at this point, and we're up to 8. So every Thursday we do a Zoom call. We have a premise. There's 7 of us. So each person has pitched an idea. We improvise it, and then whoever pitched that idea has to edit it. And I was the first one.
Oh, that's so smart.
So after we shot it, I thought, what did I get myself into? And it took me almost a week to sit down to edit it, because it was a lot. And then
it's a lot.
And then the magic happened.
Hell yeah. That's diversity hire?
Yes.
Is that what it's called? Yeah. Right. Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, I can't imagine editing that. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And you have to like get everybody's files and stuff. Oh man.
Yeah. Well, we'll have one person film the gallery view, one person film the
smart.
View, and then sometimes we'll do some pin views, but then we'll do outtakes on our own and submit it up to a drive, and then do it from there. So it's been a lesson in staying sharp as improvisers, but also having fun and creating something silly, and then marketing it and just putting it out in the world, because this is where we are now. And we called ourselves Diversity Hire, HIGHER, because a lot of the improv schools are going through their own reckoning in terms of race relations and institutionalized racism. So we're trying to be higher instead of hired. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's what's going on over here. And then now this, Creative in Quarantine.
Cool.
Thank you for watching Creatives in Quarantine. If you're a writer struggling with discipline to write, use some of Ari's tactics. If you learned something new, please subscribe. I invite you to. Until next time, we have more coming. See you then.